Hi, Ali Fellows. I'm Sulu Dazana, and today we are continuing with our podcast series, and we're getting to know Roger Dickinson a bit better. Roger, you have been a social change facilitator, a trainer, organizational development practitioner. Talk to us a little bit about how you have come to where you are now.
Sure, that's a big question.
You can chop it up.
I think from university, I went into sort of social development space, NGOs, faith-based organizations, and then did some consulting work, and then basically got to a point where I really wanted to do my own thing and build impact ventures that were mine, you know.
Mm.
And so I think that's kind of where I got to. I mean, 2005 was quite an important year because that's when I became a fellow and just kind of opened up a lot of perspectives that I'd never had before. Yeah, so where I am is a combination of multiple factors, but I think Ali has been a big driving
Big
force behind it.
influence.
Yeah.
How so? How so? How's
So
it?
the big issue around Ali is that or the Aspen experience is that it opens your eyes to formally think about questions structurally,
Yeah.
in a structured way, think of questions that are bugging you, like
Mm.
how do we fix the world and what's wrong with me and, you know, why are things not working and stuff like that. And I think for me and it does it in a way that is, it's not like a MBA or something that you're doing. It's more of a way of saying, think about this because this is a question that's been asked for centuries and how it affects you. So that has been, and personally that works really well for me.
Mm.
You're reading a poem or you're reading, the ones who walk away from Omelas and you're thinking, so am I in that thing? Am I walking away? Am I doing something about it? That sticks with you. That sticks with you more than any formal education does. Yeah.
Mm. Mm. So would you say? So what would you say? What decisions do you think, or projects did you start as a result of the experience that you had?
So I started. I mean, the project is always
Yeah.
a hot topic in Ali.
Yeah.
And at the start, so I became a fellow in 2005, and we had to choose projects. I chose a project to start one around mentoring um, teenagers because I thought that was what was really exciting, and it didn't work. And then life kind of went on, and part of my day job is social impact projects, and one of them is a literacy program, and it really made sense afterwards to, in a way, take what I'd learned from Ali and bring it to the literacy program and make that really not necessarily my project,
Mm.
but make the lessons and the sort of learning that I've had from Ali
Mm.
drive a lot of what we've done in the literacy
Mm.
program. And I think it has. It definitely has influenced the sort of value proposition. It's influenced the vision. It's influenced a lot of how we think about what we're doing and why we're doing it.
Mm.
So in that way, then it is an Ali project,
Mm.
right? But it hasn't had the pressure. I've never really felt the pressure recently of I need to prove that this is an Ali project.
Sure, sure.
So in that way, I think Ali's had a big impact on that particular project. But I think in a wider sense, it's really as I get older, actually, I think the classes make more sense
Mm. Mm.
about, well, why do I do what I do? And
Mm.
what does it mean to lead in a complex world?
Mm.
So,
Um, Talk to me a little bit more about the literacy program. I'm from the Eastern Cape, so it bothers me particularly every single time at the end of the year when you see the matric results, when you see how bad they are, when you see math results.
yeah.
Um, and every year, if if the news reports say there's been an improvement in the Eastern Cape or an improvement with the matric results altogether, and that improvement is 0.1%, 0.3%, just some small percentage. In your experience with the literacy program, do you see an improvement through the years with the um, with the people going through the literacy program?
So in our program, yes,
Mm.
right? And in other programs similar to ours, yes. But just to come back to your original point about matric results, I mean, the story is actually worse than that, right? So the reality is that 1 million kids, broad numbers, start grade 1
Yeah.
every year.
Yeah.
By grade 10, 500,000 have dropped out, right? And the matric results we're seeing are only 300,000 of those kids writing matric. And the results, the real results, are nearer 50% of them actually pass in a decent
Of
way.
the 300.
Yeah. And then those that go into a tertiary institution, be it a college or a university, it's about 170,000. Okay, so the real numbers, when we look below what is on the headlines, are really that we're having somewhere around a 1% success rate in South Africa, right? Or 10% success rate. Yeah, 10% success rate of throughput. And where we've come, so where I went to was to try and figure out what is a leverage point. And what we're finding is that kids cannot keep up with the reading requirements of school. And so the kids who are dropping out, that 500,000 that's dropping out by grade 10, it's not because there's anything wrong with them, it's just because they can't keep up with the workload, right? They can't read fast enough, and in fact there's measurements for that. You can actually test how fast a kid can read. You can test those things, and if you can test it, then you can fix it, right? And as a country, we have stopped standardized testing. With the academic national assessments a few years ago, we stopped that. So we actually don't know as a country how bad things are, right? And results get politicized and all of that kind of stuff. So where we've gone as our program said, well, if we drew a line in the sand and said, well, every kid that comes through our program, what is their real number? How fast can they read? What is their standardized testing? And we do very simple testing. And because of that, there's a famous saying that you can't manage what you can't measure, right? Because you can measure it, you can then manage where the kids go. And we're seeing it's dramatic improvements, which is great, but we're still quite a small program, So where we're pushing now is to get that spread out across a wider scope, yeah.
Well, across all of South Africa.
All of South Africa, and then we're also starting to talk in relationship with 15 other countries to see how we can do that in other countries.
African countries.
African countries, yeah.
Okay, all right. And what will be your success measure then?
So my success measure, ultimately, when as a country we institute a standardized testing and process, mainstream that, so that every child in South Africa has a chance to get past that grade 10 dropout. And not only get past that, but get to matric, be able to write matric and pass it and have a chance at really getting employed and be the best they can be.
Yeah.
For me, that's ultimately my success measure. You can't say, well, we're helping whatever we've helped so far, 150,000, 200,000 kids. That's a drop in the bucket, right? You really want every child that comes through our schooling system. That's the promise we made, right? That's the promise as a country. We make every child, that the doors of learning shall be opened and every child has the opportunity. And I think keeping that promise is important to me, even though I'm not in government. That promise is the promise we've made. So that is my measurement that I'm working towards, to say, well, 5-10 years time, max, we need to fix this. And I think we're on the road to doing that.
Surely there are more challenges than just the standardized, just making sure that there's a way to measure how far the kids have come. It will be poverty, it will be various things that we know in South Africa. So how then, how then do you suggest that our schooling system supports those children, not just in an impoverished situation, but teachers and the standards that are being used at the moment? What should be done? Because it seems to me that this is just a mammoth problem.
Yeah, I mean, it's multifaceted, right?
Mm.
So you can't say this is the issue
Yeah.
and it's the only issue. But let me give you an example. So if we were to make so the standardized assessment or any assessment that is real, if I was to test a child in Dipsloot right now and you said, well, this child can read at this level, they're supposed to be at that level, okay, and you do that for a classroom, they have a teacher that is paid in that classroom. If then the second point is to say, teacher, this is the plan for these kids. There's 50 kids in your class probably. 20 of them, and these are our numbers, 5 of them can read at the right level, usually about 10%. 25 are okay, but they need some work, and the other 25 are really struggling. So this is the plan of action for these kids in these different groups, and that's what we do, right? So we say, this is your plan of action for the kids who can read, this is your plan of action for the kids in the middle group, and this is your plan of action for the kids who are really struggling. And for me, that kind of assistance to a teacher would change the whole game. Because if I'm a teacher and I'm coming in tomorrow and I'm like, okay, these kids, this is what they're doing, these kids. So currently we have a policy of what we call curriculum coverage, which says we must cover the curriculum within the 9 months of schooling that way. And so in practice, what that means is teachers push through the curriculum to finish. So so it doesn't take into account the fact that we have up to 80% of our kids who cannot read for understanding, right? That's an independent assessment that was done by polls. And in our program, we see that across all demographic groups, that 80% of our kids are 3 to 5 years behind on their reading ability. So for me, that if we were to fix that and focus on that for 2-3 years, making sure the teacher has the ability to just fix that, I think we'd make massive difference. Because once you can read and comprehend, then schooling actually becomes okay. You know, I'm not sure if schooling is ever pleasurable for all children, but at least you can go in and engage with the work, right? And I think for me, that is something that we can control. We can't control poverty, right? You can, but that's not what we do. The school, though, every child, I mean, we have a 97% attendance level in our country. 97% of our kids are going to school, which is brilliant, right? Under apartheid, it was around 45% of our kids were going to school. So we've got that right? We've got the kids in the school. So we've got a captive audience, we've got them where we want them. Let's do what's supposed to happen in the school. And I'm not saying that the Department of Education is not doing it, right? I just think that we as a society need to give a lot more support to our schools to get very specific things right. And it applies to literacy, which is where I work, but numeracy is exactly the same, exactly the same.
Right. Let's go back to Roger Dickinson, the person. You are from Johannesburg.
I'm from Johannesburg, yeah.
And you have children, and you've got a family, right?
Yeah, I'm married with 4 children.
Okay. What is next for Roger in the next 10 years? Or 5? Or 7?
So it's interesting you say that. So I currently work in 7-year sort of periods.
Okay.
My life seems to have worked out in
Okay.
7-year. It's kind of biblical, which is nice. But so 7 years seems to be the point at which I need to move on.
Okay.
Right? And I think I'm coming to I'm now in the 5th year of a 7-year
Of your
period.
cycle.
Yeah.
Okay.
So in 2 years' time, I need to move on. And I really, and where I'm going to is probably to leave education behind
Really?
Yes, and get into youth employment, which is really not leaving education behind, but really saying, well, the kids that are out, well, kids, I'm talking as a
The
48-year-old, but the young people who are out of school, and South Africa's got between 6 and 8 million a year unemployed youth. What's the plan, right? And how do we bring people together to fix that? And then looking at Africa as a continent, we've got the largest growing young population, right, on the planet. If we don't fix youth unemployment, we are looking at the next 20 to 40 years of civil unrest, of deepening poverty. So for me, that is the next challenge, is to find out how could I play a part in really figuring out how we work on youth employment.
All right.
Yeah.
Do you have any ideas right now what kind of projects you will get yourself involved
Yeah,
in, or
absolutely.
what you're looking forward to?
Well, it's really around, so it's really around frameworks, right? So recently I was just told by an expert that it takes in South Africa 1,000 days for a young person to find their first job, right? So from where you exit school, be that as a matriculant or a grade 10.
And that doesn't even include the 500 that have
Yeah.
dropped out since.
So anyone, right? So
Yeah.
anyone who leaves school, be it at grade 10 or matric, or even, we unfortunately finding our graduates, it takes up to 3 years to get your first job. So you can imagine 3 years is a long time, especially in a young person's life, to not be employed, to be sitting around, to be a burden on parents or on a community, etc. And so really the framework I'm working on is saying, well, how do we shorten that time? If we shorten that time to 6 months, 8 months, or what happens in those 3 years, right? And I've really recently found some people doing great work in informal settlement, in casual work, in volunteerism, in job shadowing. And so can we create a database, and this is something we're actually starting to work on now, of kids who are out of the system, and how do you funnel them into the appropriate programs so that the 1,000 days they spend are actually productive days.
Yes.
So when they do get into their first job, it's for real, right?
Yeah.
It's for real.
That experience.
They've got experience, and the stats show that if you can keep your first job for 8 months or more, you have an 80% chance of being employed for the rest of your life, right? It's just the social skills, the habits, the networks that you create. So for me, that's really exciting. I mean, that's something that it might not, that's actually something I'm starting now, but I think for the next couple of years, that's what I'm going to be doing. Yeah.
What about entrepreneurship? A lot of people say that a major solution to many of the challenges that we have is entrepreneurship.
It is, and I mean it's a very widely used word, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we think entrepreneurship, we think Silicon Valley or those kind of people, right? And the other day I was driving and someone mentioned to me that the people that are taking the plastic containers out of your dustbin and taking them down the road, those are entrepreneurs.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'd never thought about it, right? And I thought, well, we don't build those people up. We look at them as oh, that's nice, and our shame, or whatever our kind of social conscience goes with.
We're actually annoyed that they're on the road, and they're not using traffic signs and all this, and they're on the road, and we are, and we're driving. We don't give them space, etc. We're quite annoyed.
Yeah, and think about spaza shops, right?
Yeah.
We don't see spaza shops as entrepreneurs, right? We don't, even this is a little bit, I mean, even people on the side of the road begging, in a sense, they're entrepreneurs, right? It's not what you'd want from a personal dignity issue, right? And so when we talk about entrepreneurship, I've started thinking a lot about how do we shift the term so that someone who is collecting and recycling, someone who is selling stuff at a taxi rank is seen as an entrepreneur, and more importantly, sees themselves as an entrepreneur. Because if we start using the term a lot more in a Southern African context, right, and not just a startup with some tech hub or something, maybe we can do a lot more for those people. Maybe we can start putting some money into that, you know. I was recently in Kenya and they've just passed a bill on the tuk-tuks. I don't know if you know
Yes, I
those,
know.
you know, those three tricycle stuff. And 300, there are 300,000 of those in Kenya. And they just recently passed a bill making them a protected industry,
Okay.
right? And basically what that means is that they then can access government funding for their businesses, right? And so a lot of youth are going into that. I mean, Kenyan traffic is an incredible thing to behold anyway, but I was just amazed at how it works, right? It's working, people are doing, the country's moving, and I think things like that is, I think we got to get a lot more creative around what we consider entrepreneurship in our country. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for making the time
Great, thank you.
to chat to our fellows and having our fellows get to know you a little bit better. Thank you.
Thanks, Lulu. Thank you very much.